Today we are going to make an artwork that shows atmospheric perspective. It's going to show that the objects in the background are lighter and the objects in the foreground are darker. We're going to do a mountain scene. If you look here, this is a picture out of a newspaper that shows the Blue Ridge Mountains, and it's darker in the front and it gradually gets lighter as it goes farther back. We're going to try to create that in our own artwork. Here is a finished example that shows the shade in the front, the pure color out of the bottle there, and then several tints as you go back into space. Later we will add our silhouettes in the foreground. So to start off, you're going to want your white piece of paper and a pencil to divide your paper into those sections or draw those different rolling hills or mountain peaks. So the first area, I'm going to put in the darkest area. So I'm going to come down to the bottom and kind of show where that shade might be, that darker color. And it could be smooth, it could be bumpy, it can be however you want it to be. I'm gonna go a little bit farther back and draw the next section, which will be the color right out of the bottle. I'm gonna go a little farther back again and show the next section of rolling hills or mountain peaks. And I'm gonna do one more in the distance. I'm gonna let it overlap there just a hair. And again there. So I have 4 separate lines to divide my paper. Now I can go ahead and start mixing my tints and shades to create this artwork. You could use any color that you want. I'm going to use purple today, but you saw in this example that I had used blue previously. So I'm going to start by mixing my lightest tint. I'm going to take my white, I'm going to make a new section I could just add it to that, but I want to make sure, I want to give myself a little extra white to play with in case I go too dark the first time. I'll rinse my brush. And I'm going to put in just a tiny bit of purple, just a little tiny bit. I want this to be a very light value of purple. This is going to be actually representing the sky, the farthest space in the background. Okay, I think that seems pretty good. So now, on this one you'll notice I didn't paint the whole sky. I kind of did more like strokes of color. You can either paint the whole sky or do those little strokes going side to side. I'm going to come into the top and put in that very light purple, barely there. Just a light little bit of color. Okay, now I'm going to darken it a little bit more so that we can see it more to create the farthest back mountain range. So I'm going to take my more purple, mix it into that there. And use this to start painting my farthest area back. maybe I went a little too high there. I might just adjust that. There we go. I'll bring it in here. And again, a little bit more over here. I like to start with the farthest back of the paper and work forward, because if I get a little bit of paint in the next area, I can cover it with my darker color. So now I can go ahead and make the next tint. So it's still going to be lighter than the purple out of the bottle. And if you're worried you don't have enough, you can make a little bit more. That's what I'm going to do, just to make sure that I have enough. Okay, so now I can start putting that onto the next range of hills. Trying to use the edge of my brush on those curves to kind of get a nice smooth line. Okay, now I can rinse my brush and I can use the purple right out of the container, that pure purple. I'm almost done with this section, and then I can move on to creating that shade. All right, the last part, I'm gonna take just a tiny little bit of black and start adding it into my purple to get it to be a little darker than the color that I just used. And you don't need much, but you can start with a little and then you can always add more. I feel like I could go a little bit darker. Okay, now I'm gonna go ahead and put in that final area that's closest to the front. And once I've completed this section, I'll have to let it dry before I add in my silhouettes. Okay, so now I'll let this dry, and then we will add our silhouettes. Now we can add our tree or silhouettes. It might not be a tree, it could be something else, but something in the foreground that is really a silhouette. We're not seeing a bunch of details, we're more seeing the dark color of that silhouette. So for tree references, I have some examples to look at, or it could be perhaps a tree more like this or one of these. On the ones that I've completed, on this one, I have just a little bit of grass and, nature down at the bottom, and these taller trees that have the leaves coming off of them. Or on this one, I have more of those evergreen type trees coming from the bottom and working their way up. So either what style would work. I'm gonna use mostly black and maybe put a tiny bit of purple in. My paper's curling up a little bit, but once I'm finished, I can sort of flatten it out with some heavy books or something to kind of get those curves out. So if I want to, I can just do pure black, but if I'd like, I can add, a little bit of purple into that black. So you'll choose where you want to put your tree. I think to create that sort of evergreen look, I'm going to start by doing a line down the middle. And then I'm going to use sort of more of a tapping motion to create that texture. So I'm going to kind of tap like that, and then gradually get a little bit wider as I come out from the trunk of the tree. If I need it a little bit darker, I can go in there and add that. And it could be that it just has this trunk at the end, or I can bring those all the way down to the bottom. I can also use that like I did previously and have some areas where maybe we see just some nature kind of coming up, some grass or such at the bottom. I can do that other style of tree if I wanted, maybe coming off the page, so maybe doing a line down to represent that trunk. And then creating the branches coming off of that. And then using that same motion to create that texture, to give it some fullness of the leaves. I am running out of my black, so I'm just going to try to hurry this along. Something like that.